Hello guys, Chris here and welcome to episode 31 of the Pocket Podcast. Today, we have a little bit of a different style of podcast today. It's with two of my really good friends, Jack and Will. These two are both very successful in their own rights in business, have done some really cool things, especially for their age. We're also just really good mates and we got along very, very well. So we thought, let's do a roundtable style conversation where we discuss certain things and different topics, relationships, business, life, mindset. It was an awesome chat and I cannot wait for you guys to check this one out. If you have any feedback on this one, drop a comment down below or send me a DM on Instagram. That would mean the world. It helps the show grow. It helps me keep improving it week on week. But before we jump right into this episode with Will and Jack, we need to take a minute to thank our sponsors of the podcast, Switch Nutrition. I want to talk about these three products that I'm holding in my hands right now: the Hydrate, the Adrenal, and then the Collagen. I take these three products every single day to look after my foundational health because there's so many different supplements online. There's different people that are going to tell you all sorts of different things, but I love to strip it right back to the basics and what are the foundations that we need to be taking every single day to look after the baselines of our health. So I take the Hydrate first thing in the morning with a liter of water. It keeps me hydrated and energized, ready to go. The Adrenal I have the last thing I do just before bed, 30 minutes before bed, I have this, a scoop of this, and I make kind of like a hot chocolate out of it with the chocolate flavor so I can sleep like a baby. And then the Collagen I have throughout the day with my yogurt bowls. I mix it into the Greek yogurt. It's really good for hair, skin, joints, nails, and then also hitting that protein goal for the day. If you want to try out any of Switch Nutrition's products, you can go to the link in the description or the show notes below, and that is my personal collections page where it has all the products that I take and love every single day. Alternatively, go to switchnutrition.com.au and use the code Chris Griffin and you'll get 20% off your entire order. Alternatively, hit the link in the description or the show notes below and you'll go straight to that collections page. I am not going to keep talking. I'm going to jump right into this episode with Jack and Will. You guys enjoy. I reckon we could talk for hours before the podcast, or we could roll into the show and then we could have an actual chat on the podcast and record it. What do you guys think we should do? Should we talk or should we press play?
What do you mean?
We rolling?
Is that like a, can you shut up and start? is that what that was?
So guys, we are going to try an oxyshred just before we roll into the show.
Yeah.
You got cola. What one do you have?
I've got the kiwi strawberry.
I'm going to do cola as well. Let's crack her open.
Sweet, man.
Do I get paid for this?
No, but give us a try. So
Okay.
cheers. And cheers to a good conversation.
Cheers. It's not bad.
It's not bad.
To be very honest, it's better than I expected
mine's
with
good.
the green branding.
I
very good.
actually love the cola one. It's kind of like, it tastes like Coke. But
Oh, you had the same one?
yeah, but Jack and Will, before the show, I got you guys to write down a quote for me. We're going to go with Jack's one first. It was something that you love. It was something that came to mind today straight away. And Jack, you wrote, "How you do anything is how you do anything." Mm-hmm. That was wrong, wasn't it? How you do anything is how you do everything.
It's a great start. Well, you can roll with it. It's my entire life. It's everything that I do. Most things are hard, and most things I don't want to do, per se. It's really easy to cheap out. It's really easy to kind of not go the full way. Like whether it's cleaning something up, whether it's a conversation with someone that I don't want to have, but I know I should, whether it's, you pick any example in life. If you go and you can just do that thing, but you do it well, you almost set the example for yourself and prove to yourself this standard that you live by. And it's so easy to drop that, especially when you think no one's looking.
The things that are easy to do and also easy not to do. Mm-hmm. I love that thing around the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I live by that too. And it's even setting up this podcast studio, right? It's like we literally...
We've witnessed it.
It's just making sure that you can put like if you're going to do something, do it and do it properly. I think too many people settle for good. And then when they settle for good, they just hide in the crowd of all these people. And then it's just that little conversation, right? Is if you're not doing the best you possibly can in the small little things, that's like a thing that bottles up in your mind in a sense. And that's going to carry on to when things actually matter. You're going to have to perform like that. And I think it's this internal dialogue that we have with ourselves that actually matters. It's stacking those little wins that we are who we say we are in a sense.
Yeah, I've found how I kind of think about it as well is if you were to believe that there was a camera in every single room that you were in, especially ones that no one else is in. So you're by yourself. And when you're by yourself, it's really easy to take shortcuts and not go all the way or just not do anything because you believe no one's watching. So if someone filmed your entire life and they made it into a TV show, would you be proud to show people? And honestly, the answer for me is like, no, I'm not always proud to do that. And I think it's probably the same for most people. But if you can at least have that in the back of your head, that if you were to show your future kids, you were to show your parents, you were to show anyone that you really cared about, these are the kind of decisions that you were making and this is the kind of thing that you were doing, would you be proud of that?
That's a pretty powerful thing. That's a concept that we could ponder on. Oh my goodness. Imagine filming everything that you ever do and your life is a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to share that? Would you premiere your movie or not?
Yeah.
Would you?
I'd like to think so.
I think you would.
I would, yeah, because I could own the fact that not everyone's perfect. Like for as good as someone is as something, they are as bad. Like everyone's got those days where they're completely focused and on the ball and everything they want to get done, they get done and they act in accordance with their own values. There are those other days where, you're not as perfect as you'd like to be and you slip up. And I think it's when you slip up, it's how you reflect on that. And if you hate yourself for it and you beat yourself up and you kind of compare yourself to some sort of fantasy that you believe that you should be living, it's almost like, in my mind, it's like this revolving cycle that starts where it gets harder to improve because you continually spin around in circles and say, look, I should have been this, but I wasn't. So the answer is probably yes. Like I would be proud to do it, even if there were moments in there that I wasn't proud of, only because I would probably prefer to learn from them, as hard as they might be to learn from them and improve. Otherwise, I don't think there's room for improvement because I just beat myself up for them.
But do you think that the fuck ups are what make you relatable? It's what make you human, and you need to have them.
Yeah,
literally.
Like when you look at someone's life, and it's all perfect sunshine and rainbows, something's fishy about that person.
Yeah.
Like when someone is not saying yes to everything, when you can see that there's good and bad in their story, it makes them feel more real. Would you agree?
I would agree. And from the perspective of someone watching, I'm with you. But I think also just practically speaking, there's like public success and there's private success and there's public failure and private failure. I think a lot of people overcapitalize on this public success. So for example, if it's like raising money, or if it's starting a business and it does really well, or if it's having a family or a relationship that, goes well and you kind of put that on social media because you got the kid or you got the wife now or whatever that looks like. To get to that point was years. It was years of these kind of decisions and again, actions that you had to take when no one was watching, where you could deem those as private successes. But there were also those private failures as well that no one really witnessed, that you can't really repeat because no one would really understand. So if you were to kind of document, call it everything, you were to kind of have this idea of someone filming it all, I think someone would be able to see kind of the private success and the private failure beyond just publicly what people get to see. Because even though you can be really out and proud on kind of public failures or try and put those out, being able to really, show someone what it takes to get to a certain point would be helpful.
Why don't we show it?
I would argue that you are starting to probably show that now. Didn't you just release an episode?
Yeah. Well, I just started a whole video series, which is like, I had an idea around importing furniture from China and I had no idea what I was doing. I've never imported furniture from China before. And the whole philosophy was, why don't we bring a camera? Why don't we, it's like my best mate Hamish is a videographer. It's like, let's go to China together as mates and let's go and film it all. And the whole view was like, let's film all the stuff ups. Like arriving at the airport and not having anyone to pick us up and trying to find a DD, and like you don't speak Chinese, so you can't find DDs. It's all in Chinese. Trying to negotiate with suppliers. You don't know who these suppliers are. You're running around China trying to find furniture that you think you're in a furniture city, but all the stuff is crap. And it's all overpriced, and people are trying to rip you off left, right, and center. And we just videoed all of it. And to kind of take people on a journey where it is this third party perspective is exactly what we're trying to do. So yeah, there's that, but then there's also the decisions around, how do we go above and beyond in that? Like I should have filmed I was going to do a TikTok day in the life when I was in China, and I didn't do it. And there's like no excuse for me not to do it, but I just didn't do it. So there are many things even connected to that where there might be a bit of public success because we got the video out, but there are all these things that I'd committed to that, didn't happen. And those aren't in the video. And those aren't things that I talk about. So I could probably even go further with a lot of this stuff, and probably should.
But that's not really failures. That's you beating yourself up. Before what you said was we all kind of can beat ourselves up. You were talking about how, like, when we don't do something, imagine if there's always a camera on us and we seem to beat ourselves up on some days and because we're not doing stuff. Imagine if there was a camera filming us, how would we treat ourselves and how would we do everything that we're doing? We'd probably give it a full effort. Do you feel like you beat yourself up on days that you don't feel like you've done everything you could do?
Yes. And that's why I made the comment earlier, which is how you beat yourself up, I think, is one of the biggest determining factors of whether you get ahead or not. I know a lot of people, maybe the easiest example is fitness. I know a lot of people who say they want to go to the gym and don't go to the gym. And their immediate comment after that is like some sort of like I don't know what the word would be, but it's kind of, they beat themselves up for not doing that thing. And then that next day, it makes it harder for them to get out of bed and harder for them to actually do the thing that they had committed to doing. I think I don't know the words for it, but you have an image for yourself and you have expectations that you set. If I believe that I'm someone who gets up and goes to the gym every morning, or I'm someone that runs every morning, that is me. That is just something that I do. And if I overthink it, I overanalyze it, I think of all the reasons to why I didn't go to the gym the day before and how hard it was, it makes it that much harder to do it. So maybe that's the answer, but I'm going to flip this back on you, seriously, because
I'm not quite done just saying, yeah, okay. Because I just want, what I want to understand is, you're saying in this context that beating yourself up is a negative thing and it's kind of negatively reinforcing. But would you also say that beating yourself up is having standards and going, come on, mate, you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it? Would you say that there's beating yourself up in a positive sense or a negative sense, or would you say that it's all negative?
I think if you look at beating yourself up as all negative, that is where I believe you take 2 steps back. But if you're able to use the feelings that you feel when you don't do something as a form of accountability, where you can start to love the fact that, hey, look, I didn't do it. And now I actually have this feeling inside of me where I feel kind of like shit for not doing it. You can hate yourself for feeling shit because of it. Or you can look at it and say, well, if I didn't have these feelings or these thoughts that held me to account, then the odds of me actually kind of thinking about going to the gym tomorrow or having that motivation probably wouldn't be there. There'd be no sort of accountability mechanism that we have. Like last night, we spoke about alcohol and hangovers. Whereas if there were no hangovers, some sort of accountability, like people would be dead. It's like liver disease would be a massive, it is, but it's like, it'd be even bigger of an issue. There's no accountability. So I think in every single thing in life, those feelings that you get, people hate them, is probably my point. People hate the feelings that they have. And if you're able to just kind of balance it a bit better, where you can kind of like the fact that there is some sort of accountability and you're able to channel that and use that as motivation to say, yeah, I've got these feelings. I'm not going to beat myself up for them, but I'm going to use them as some form of motivation to do the thing that I want to do, to make myself proud if I was to, again, record everything in my life, have that camera in the top of the room, then I like, for me, that works most of the time. I'm not perfect at it, but
Do you feel like you beat yourself up, Will?
Yes. And I guess the inner dialogue would be finding the balance between how much is healthy and how much is not. Beating up is probably not the right word. It's a self-regulation, like a self-check all the time. And I think, I don't know, that it's different every day, man. I definitely don't think I have it right at all, but I would say some days, I think it comes back to a point that we talked about a while ago, which you kind of introduced it to me, which is the equilibrium, the homeostasis piece, right? Is like, you'll have moments when you sprint and moments when you kind of retract, and you have moments when you'll kind of not plateau, but you're kind of sitting in the homeostasis, like the equilibrium part. I would say it's up and down.
Our biggest enemy is our mind, though, right? Ourself. The mind games that play on us is ridiculous, right? like think about like even the smallest things about like holding those little commitments to ourselves, and like you're in your head about all the different reasons why you should or you shouldn't do something, when in reality, like, you should just do the fucking thing.
How many times does that happen? Honestly, all the time.
Yeah,
literally.
Well, it's and just coming back to what you were saying before about how people are using the self-criticism as like a negative. It's taking them 2 steps back. I think it's that victim mentality, really. And I love that great Hormozy thing that he said. And he said, heroes and villains both have the same backstory, pain. And he says, the hero says, the world hurt me, I'm not going to let it hurt anyone else. And the villain says, the world hurt me, I'm going to hurt everyone else, sort of thing. He's like, heroes use pain, villains are used by it. And I love this whole concept because I think we can get these pains in our life, whether that's a setback or something that's not going our way, or a heartbreak or a business failure, or you lose a deal that you've been working on for ages. And we can look at that and be like, fuck, woe is me. I'm a victim. Like, it's the world, it's everyone else's fault. It's got nothing to do with me. And this is shit. And you're going to get drowned in it, and take those 2 steps back. Or you can be the hero about it, take ownership and go, where's the lesson in this? Seek the answers and actually grow as a person from that thing. It's an interesting concept, but our mind is our biggest enemy for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think for a lot of people, it's this constant battle between expectations of yourself and what you believe you are meant to be doing, with a mix of what everyone else believes you're meant to be doing, with maybe some past trauma, or pick the word, where it's just past expectations of things that are the right thing to do versus not. And it is all of these things combined into one, and also trying to figure out where you're meant to be going as a person, figuring out what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it. So you've kind of got all this historical baggage, per se, and then you've kind of got all this future ambition that you're constantly trying to navigate through, and you're trying to kind of pick the right path. And I understand that for a lot of people, for me, it's hard, because you are really trying to walk a path every single day. There's all this external stimulus that kind of comes in, all these different thoughts and opinions from people, and you've just got to find a path through it that you don't even know is the right path to be walking.
But then also recognizing that what you are looking for is what you'll find. And if you look for the good, you'll find the good. If you look for the bad, you'll find the bad. It kind of ties in really well to, Will, the quote that you said before the show is, if you think you'll succeed or fail, you're right.
Yes.
Talk to me about that quote, brother, and what that means to you.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I think I guess the thing I love about it the most is it's literally what it says is all it is. It's like so simple. And I literally have it on the whiteboard in our office, and people hate me for it, but I literally look at it every day. I'm like, guys, check this out. Like, it dictates how I run my whole life. And it all just comes back to what you were saying at the start is inner dialogue. It's like, what you're searching for, you'll find. And if you think you'll succeed, you will. And if you think you fail, you will, unfortunately. And obviously there's things we can't control, I'm sure, like external stimulus, but it's up to us how we handle that adversity and how we move on and get to the things we really want to do.
I am before you go, I am interested. So with that, adding on to it, if we had someone else in the room here right now, someone who's listening, and we talk about kind of maybe you can use a word like procrastination or something, or they're trying to achieve something, and they have trouble finding motivation, and they're pretty clear on what they want, but the stuff that's required and the steps that they need to take to get there, they're having trouble getting the reps in every single day. If that person was sitting there, I'd be very interested. What would you actually, like, what would you say to that person? How would you help that person? Like, what would be the conversation that you would
Are you
would
saying
have?
to the person that wants all these things, but they're procrastinating to get them, or what in what context are you?
Well, I think for most people want something, and they either have a goal that's kind of short to medium term, or they have something bigger for their life that they're looking to achieve. And we've all got something like that. If you had someone who was struggling to achieve those things, and maybe if it's day-to-day actions that they're just struggling to start with, or they're struggling to kind of take the first step, or they're struggling to progress, and they get up every morning and they just kind of generally feel lost with it. What, maybe you don't have the words, but it's like, what sort of conversation would you have with that person?
I think that character can be multiple different people, because it can be, the cause of it could be a form of overthinking. It could be a lack of clarity. It could be a not knowing on what to do in terms of like the know how to do something. All these are different characters, and it could also be someone that has goals, but they're not actually clear on the goals. They don't know how much the Ferrari costs. They just want it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's so many different characters that fall under that banner. But even if we were to hit them one by one, overthinking, right? That's probably a big one. People have all these things that they want to do, and it gets overthinking in terms of making the next steps required on what's to take, because they go, oh shit, this thing's so far away. It's such a big goal. There's all these different things I've got to do. And what about if this happens X, Y, and Z? And they're overthinking. That's that thing around just like, can you see your next step? Just take that. And one step will lead to the other, and one step will lead to the other. And then what happens is you get a few steps down the line and you learn a few more things, you gain some more confidence about yourself, and you have more confidence in taking the next 3 steps. So for an overthinker standpoint, I think it's like, okay, granted, in the perspective that you already know where you want to get to, but you're quite overwhelmed in your mind on how to get there, I think it's just take the one step and you will learn. But for the most people, I honestly think it's a lack of clarity on what they actually want and how much they want it. Because if you really know what you want and you've backtracked it all down to how much money that is, what time you need, what access you need, and you've got clear on that, and then your why behind getting it is extremely strong, you will just start doing things and you will start looking for answers. So that would be my advice. If you don't really know what to do, you need to get clear on what that is that you even want.
I've found since actually, I guess, fully understanding, like from a numbers perspective, especially, and like tangible, like ideas on exactly how the dream life looks, complete game changer for me personally. I'm assuming you'd be the same, right?
Yeah, I am. It's I remember, so I moved in, so I was in New York for, as you know, for 2.5 years, and I moved back earlier this year, and I was looking for an apartment. When I was 16, 17, I would go running in Brisbane. There's a place called Newstead it's a suburb, and there's a place you can run along the river.
Beautiful suburb.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope. And yeah, man, there was this apartment that I'd look at every single day. I'd look at it, I'd stop, and I'd stare at this thing. And I saw a video at the time that spoke about pricing it up. I thought that's interesting.
From Lewis.
What is it? From Lewis Mocker. Yeah. And Lewis said, if you want something, go figure out the actual cost of it. Because if you are genuinely serious about obtaining that thing, why would you not know how much that thing cost? If they have an open house, go to the open house. If it's a car, go to the dealership. Go and sit in the thing, touch it, feel it. Do whatever you possibly can to not only sit there and visualize yourself having it, but practically speaking, price the thing up. So if you can get the numbers, which I did at the time, I figured out it wasn't for rent, but it was for sale. And I was doing e-commerce. So I had an entire plan, and I've actually been trying to find the notebook that I wrote it in because it'd be pretty cool to find. Write a plan on, all right, and you know how much the sale price was? It was like 1.6 or $7 million at the time. And I'd figured out with the products that I was selling, how many products I needed to sell, at what sort of profit margin I needed to achieve over what period of time to then, after tax, be comfortably able to pay myself something that would then afford the apartment. I'd even figured out how much I could write off for the use of a home office and all of it. So I was deadly serious about this. Now the goal changed and there was something else and business evolved and developed and it became the next thing and I'd price that up and I would work towards that goal. But to your point, it's like this philosophy around, and Chris, to yours, it's like if you're serious about something, whether it's a materialistic thing and you can get clear on it, or whether it's another goal that might not be materialistic, if you can picture that thing in your head and it becomes so certain that you understand exactly where you are today, which might be absolute ground zero, and you can just kind of plot a path. It might be totally wrong, but you plot a path to how you think you can actually get there. And then looking at, well, what's required today? What's required next week? What's required next month? Like, what can I physically take? Even if it's as simple as opening a laptop and doing research on a very specific topic and getting some very specific outcomes for an idea you want to start. Like, I want to figure out these 3 fundamental questions on whether this could be a good idea or not. And that's the start. It's not to try and launch a product, and that's what you're procrastinating on. You're just procrastinating on opening your laptop and researching 3 things. It's not a big thing. And then you know what that builds into as the next step and the next step and the next step. And maybe it's 100 steps until you have a product live. And then you have a whole set of other issues.
Try 1,000.
Yeah, try 1,000 because you have marketing and the whole thing. Anyway, I'm going on, but
Where do you think the procrastination comes from?
I think it's this overcomplication of what's required to get something done. I mean, if you're standing at the bottom of, per se, a mountain, you look at it and you say, that seems really hard to climb. Odds of you being motivated to climb it are probably pretty low. And that's with, frankly, everything in life. But the motivation required to open your laptop and Google something is not really that high. And again, if you can figure out what that then leads to, and you can just focus on what is the thing that I can physically do right now that's in my control, I think procrastination isn't really a thing because it could be so simple. So I think it's people overcomplicating things.
I think that comes back down to that just take the next step concept. But it's an interesting thing. I did a Q&A on my Instagram story and asked people for some questions, and what they said was, I had a fair few people ask me about what is my thoughts on fear-based procrastination. So procrastinating because you are fearful of doing the thing, or if I were to go one step further, I'd say you are scared of what other people are going to think of you if you fail doing the thing.
Sure.
So you're scared of that, so you procrastinate doing the thing. And they were asking for my thoughts on this. And honestly, unpacking the fear, because fear-based procrastination, the first step there is, okay, you're procrastinating because of fear. Where's the fear coming from? And I think getting down to those 3rd level whys and getting really clear as to where the fear is coming from and isolating that is the best way to start, I think. Because when you get really clear on what the fear is, most of the time, if you get really deep on what that fear is, you're like, I'm fucking scared over that. It's not that. It's not that bad. And so it's an interesting thing around fears. What do you think your guys, like, if you were to think about fears, like, what do you think would be your biggest fears? Because when I asked questions, the biggest one was fear of failure. Would you guys have any fears? And is there any things that you're scared of?
Mitch, who does all of your videos, who lives with you, and we have spent 2 days with now. He'll probably be editing this.
Hi, Mitch.
Is incredible, first of all. But asked a very similar question of me last night at dinner.
Did he?
In the bathroom. You know, Mitch, if I butchered the question, I'm sorry. But yeah, it was a very similar question. And my response, I firstly said, no one's ever asked me that question before, let alone in a bathroom washing our hands.
I didn't know you guys he asked you that question. For context, guys, we were talking very deep at dinner last night.
Man.
It was extremely deep conversations, but let's go back to that bathroom
I didn't know
chats.
you were in the bathroom for that long, by the way. That time flew, clearly.
Yeah. So I started with, no one's ever asked me that, first of all. So second of all, I don't have a very good answer for you. So give me a couple of seconds. So we stood there in the bathroom. I'm wiping my hands, staring him in the eye while I thought of this response. And what came to my head is there's a 15-year-old version of myself. And when I was 15, I had nothing personally. I had no sort of success. I had all this ambition around starting a business. I looked at people online who'd started businesses who were similar ages to me. I compared myself to them, thinking like, man, I should be doing that. You know, I want to start something, and I had no idea what to do. That same kid, when I look at where I am today and I look at the journey that I've gone on since that point to today, it's going back to that moment. And it's going back to this feeling of, it's kind of like helpless despair, call it, where all I wanted to do was something. I had no idea what that thing actually was, and I had no idea how to make it happen. And I think going back to that point, for me, is something that I've almost run away from for the last number of years, and has propelled me to work hard to figure things out. And there is fear every day that, you know, you are going to fail per se. And if I actually unpacked it, which the first time I did was last night, it is going back to that point in my life, which that feeling there that I had as a kid. I remember sitting there at my desk in front of my computer with my hands in my hair, thinking like, what am I going to do? I was still in my school uniforms coming from school. I don't want to be that kid again. And there's probably 15 different, you know, things that anyone could say to be like, well, things change and things evolve. You're not going to go back to that point, and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know, there's that same feeling that I don't want to have. It's that same feeling that I don't want to relive. And it's that feeling there that I frankly have to owe for a lot of what I've done today. And yeah, it was literally 12 hours ago I'd ever said that.
But you could also argue, though, you could flip that in a positive way, because, yeah, that's a fear. But also that means that you don't regret the path you've taken, clearly.
No. And dude, like it worked out. And frankly, if it wasn't for the fear, I don't think a lot of what I have done would have been possible.
But go back to that time though. How is that in that moment, were you feeling like shit? Like, was that because when I look at a time like that, I've had timeless times like that. They're not fun. But I look at that in reflection and I can laugh at those times because of how crazy life was when I look back at that. Hindsight's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Do you fear that? Because in my eyes, I look at that and go, I've overcome that before. If it happens again, I can sure overcome that again. Do you not have that feeling as well? Or do you feel like I'm scared of going back to that moment because I didn't know what to do back then, and if I get back there, I'm not going to know what to do now?
I think you've perfectly packaged it up. It is that. It is, I don't want to be back in that. And look, thinking about it now, it seems quite silly when you actually put words around it and you really think about it. But I don't know, maybe most people have a point in their life where they have, whether it's helpless despair, I don't know, whatever kind of words you want to put around it, but you're at a point in your life where you are worried that if you ever go back to that point again, you'll be in that position where you don't know what that next step is. You don't know what the plan is. And I have felt like ever since that moment and that period of time in my own life, every single time I have always had a plan, and I've always had kind of what the next step was going to be. Whether it was the right next step and whether it worked out is another thing, but I'd always had something in mind, and I'd always had what I wanted to do next. And we're talking about it. Like, I resigned as CEO from the company that I co-founded years ago, and that was back in April. And it was for the first time in my life where I didn't know exactly what the thing was, that immediate next step, what the next plan was, what I wanted to do. And there were almost parts of that where I had to really reflect and figure out, like, why is there this feeling inside of me that I don't feel certain like I have for years and years? And it was the 15-year-old that I actually spoke about for the first time last night, and, you know, probably speaking about properly again now.
So the feeling of uncertainty and no clarity on what the next steps are, I guess. So it's kind of, but when you go back to that moment in April though, when that was resurfaced again, was this time it's different because it's not like you had nothing. this time, whereas at 15 you had nothing.
You could say at 15 I had a lot. I had a roof over my head. I had food on the table
100%.
from mum and dad. I had a schooling education. I had, like I had a lot. Like I had the basics. So there are a lot of kids who had way less than I did. Just like now, people would deem I have a lot, but it doesn't. It's all
relative.
It's all relative. Yeah, it's all relative.
See, I'm really fascinated by this because I was chatting to Will last night about this level of, I don't know what the right word would be, but it's not confidence. It's I feel very deserving of a lot of the stuff that I'm receiving in my life. And I think it's because of a lot of the shit that I've been through over the last 4 years, over the last few years. I look at the things the things that are flowing into my life, and the reason I feel so deserving of these things is because of how much shit I've been through. So when I go back to the times where I'm really uncertain, there's videos of me in a vault of me crying in a car with a credit card that was maxed out and the payment was due yesterday and I don't know how to pay it. And I'm like, got no money coming in for the next month. Nothing's here. And my hands are on my head in the car going, what the fuck do I do? Right? Nothing's working. And that very moment in which I've now overcame is what gives me all this appreciation and all this feeling of deserving of everything that I'm receiving now. And so that's why I'm just really fascinated, because we have kind of different thoughts on similar times in our life in terms of the feeling that we've had. They're touching us in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything useful to say to you. I don't have any way to try and.
There's no wrong answer as well, right?
No.
Yeah, and this is the thing.
yeah.
I don't have words because I haven't actually unpicked. It's a lot. You know what's interesting? You asked the question earlier around procrastination, and my answer was around. Should just realize my answer was around knowing what the next step was. It's breaking down a hard problem and figuring out what you can practically do tomorrow. And what I've just said is the hardest points in my life is when I don't know what the next step actually is, when there is no clarity around what you have to do. And I've been fortunate or unfortunate enough to know many people who have, I watch in similar situations where shit just falls around. It's either whether it's in a relationship, whether it's with business, whether it's with whatever. And they sit there and they literally have no idea what to do next. And that affects me more, I think, than anything. Because I look at myself through them and I almost reflect on their pain and go, if that was me, I understand. I know how I would feel. And I know what that feeling would be. So I don't know, man. I just...
Sorry, real quick, because we've been friends for a long time. And I've literally seen it was actually more recent where we were about to go to bed and you hadn't planned what you were doing the next day. And it really got to you. I could see it. And
when was this?
I can't remember. I'm wondering if it was even this trip here. But no, there was a time when you because it gave me an insight into you. I'm assuming that pretty much every night you go to bed, you know what's coming the next day, right? Is that true?
It is. I mean, like I spoke about last night, the thing that I sit down and do most nights is figure out exactly what are the 3 things I want to achieve the next day. And if I don't get done that night, I'll be the next morning. That's how my life runs and that's how my life operates. So I'm sitting, I want to ask you a question. Sorry, you pushed me off last time. I think for a lot of people, when I started following you, call it a year ago, and I've watched what you've done over the last 12 months, and frankly, it's phenomenal. And I think I've told you that numerous times, and you're probably sitting there going,
Thank
God.
you.
But you talk about fear. You've gone through, you've had this astronomical rise over the last 12 months, and I could say it's astronomical. It's 12 months of just started with nothing, and you're here. I wonder, what do you fear? What do you fear now?
It's interesting. I went on a retreat a couple of months ago, and one of the questions was, what are your biggest fears? And I actually really struggled to answer that question. As you said, you sat and thought about it for ages. I really struggled to answer that question. I don't actually have big fears. I'm actually in a position where I actually don't have big. I spent hours thinking at this retreat about fears because we had days, and I actually struggled to think about big fears because there's all these fears that are pretty common in terms of, getting 1 year away and looking back and going, fuck, I've gone nowhere. Like those are all fears, but they don't keep me up at night. I would say that I'm gonna reword this and say fear's probably not the term I'm gonna use for this example. I'm gonna say that things creep into my life that play with my mental health and my mind races when I am not aligned and clear on the path that I'm going. So whenever my direction is blurred a bit, or I am onboarding too many things and I'm spreading myself too thin, negative things creep in, like comparison, as an example. I will compare myself to people doing better than me only when I'm not clear on where I want to be. I'll give you a prime example. 2 months ago, when I was just basically going all in on my podcast, things were booming. I was giving it everything. I deserved all the success that I was getting. I did not give a fuck about what anyone said. Anyone, no one. If someone asked me how do I feel, I would have said I feel unstoppable, quite literally, and I'll just say that, like, legitimately. That's literally how I felt. What happens is shiny object syndrome has come in the way, and I'm onboarding too many things. A lot of opportunities come my way and I've said yes too many times. What happens is then you spread yourself too thin, and at that very point in time, the negative thoughts come in because you start questioning what you're doing, whereas before you were certain. So then when you're questioning what you're doing, you're not certain on where you're going, the negative thoughts like comparison, that's when my head hits the pillow and I can't sleep. And I'm just up. And I need to put on some sort of calming meditation, or I'm literally typing in the Insight Timer app, overthinking meditation for sleep, and like trying to, and I'll put on a 30-minute meditation just so I can try and get to sleep. And this is when alarm bells come off for me. And this is when I'm talking to you last night about things that I like. Being true to what actually matters in my life is so important, because all of these negative things are eliminated when I feel truly aligned with everything that I'm doing is getting me closer to where I truly want to be. And so when you ask about fears, I wouldn't say that fears are a regular thing in my life. I would say that things creep in, negative thoughts, fears, when I'm not true on my path. So the answer is get back on that path.
Well, man, like, I feel like we would all be pretty the same, where we, in our lives, we're very fortunate to not have the problem of lack of opportunity. Opportunity is literally everywhere all the time. And I think we all have the mindset that we're ready to take it, right? But it's literally like you said, and we've got the same, like I have the same issues for sure, I'm sure you do too, where you start to take on the things that you don't realize at the time always that they're not aligned with your values, because you're excited by the opportunity, like shiny ball, yeah, like that kind of thing. And how quickly you get rid of them is...
You know what I think, which is interesting, is we should swap the thought of opportunity. We should not think in the lens of what opportunity should I take. I think we should think in the lens of what opportunity cost are we willing to endure. So when we are saying yes to an opportunity, what is the cost to saying yes to that opportunity? I think if we made decisions under that lens, when we are opportunity rich, when there's so many opportunities, we make decisions off the cost in which that opportunity is going to cost us, is an interesting thing. Because when you say yes to one thing, you've got to say no to another. And I think when you get inundated with opportunity, your ability to say no is more important than saying yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I hate referring to the fact that we had a conversation about this last night, but I'm gonna say it. Last night,
We spoke for 5 hours
Five
about
hours.
deep chats. There's
It
probably a
was like
lot of things.
You and me on one side just locked in, and then you and Mitch on the other side.
Every
just
now and then
locked
we'll
in.
just look over at Jack and he just there, just looking at each other in the eyes, just thinking, no talking. And I'm going, this is deep. This is very deep.
yeah. There's this concept that I live by, which is, I've spoken to you guys about it, which is this hierarchy of values. And I believe that everyone has a set of values. Now, like, what is a value? It's this concept, which is a very broad understanding of what are the things that you get up in the morning and what do you think about? So I take my mum. She thinks about family. She gets up in the morning, she's thinking about who's she going to call? What's her mum doing? She's thinking about me. She's thinking about my younger brother. She's thinking about what is the breakfast, for example, that she can make to serve the family. What is the shopping that she can do that day to serve the family? That is, and I've spoken to her about it, that is the number one thing that she gets up, and that is kind of the world in which she operates, because it is her number one value. I look at myself and I get up in the morning and I think about business. I'm thinking about what sort of opportunity is ahead of me. I'm thinking about what I need to do that day for the whatever project I've got, and how I'm going to move that forward. And I'm thinking about the challenges that are upcoming and what I've got to do about them. That's me. I ain't getting up and thinking about family. My second value is fitness. So I'm thinking about, okay, what time am I going to run today? What time am I going to go to the gym? And for mum, her second value might be business. So she thinks about it, but it's not as much as family. So for most people, it's really easy to figure out what you value. Literally sit down with a pen and a paper. And I went to a course run by a guy called John DeMartini. And I sat there for a solid 2 days. Started at 6 a.m. in the morning, went to 10 p.m. at night. And call it half that course. You sit there and you write. What do you think about, first of all, when you get up in the morning? Where does your mind go? And then second of all, what are the actions that you are most inspired to take? So is it, I don't need motivation to call my family. I don't need motivation to go and work on a business. I don't need motivation to go and do fitness. And there are about 30 other things that someone might be able to value, etc. So you can kind of walk away with this if you really sit down and think about it with kind of a list of 3 to 5 main things that are on your list of values. And if you can kind of start to create some sort of purpose statement where you can understand that these are the things that I value most. And when you get opportunities that come your way, say it's an opportunity to go spend time at a family event. You don't actually like family events that much. And then you walk away from that family event not feeling as inspired and motivated as when you walked in. But then you get this special business opportunity that kind of fits between, fitness. It fits between maybe some other thing that you value, and it kind of intersects the three of them. And you go, you know what? That's really cool. I really want to do that. Maybe a value is teaching, and it's like it's an opportunity to run a business teaching people to do fitness. Maybe that hits all three. Like, that feels inspiring. So I think for me, that has worked wonders when it comes to saying no. I know that shopping isn't on the list of values. I know cooking also isn't on the list of values. So you can just kind of start to eliminate these things out of your life. And there's this concept of like dumping, ditching, or delegating. And you can find ways to kind of structure your day and structure your life purely around the things that you find are in accordance with your highest values. And they're things that you don't need external motivation to do. They're things that you get intrinsic motivation to get up in the morning and do. And I try every day to live my life in accordance with that. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it does serve me well to a degree where it comes to like being able to be the very best version of myself and trying to live in service of my own values. The only thing else I'll say on that is everyone else also has a set of values, and most people's are different. And everyone loves to push their value set onto you. So if your mum, for example, has a high value on family, she will beat you up per se, or make some comments that say like, hey, you don't call your brother enough. You don't call your sister enough. You should call them more. And you go, well, I don't really want to call them more. Like, it's not something I find that inspiring. And you might wonder why. Maybe you're not doing a good enough job. You kind of compare yourself to what you think you should be. But if you look at that and you love the fact that she has values and you can respect her for that, you can talk to her in terms of her values. You can say like, hey, I understand that it's really important to you, but it's actually not important to me at this moment in my life, or it is, but there's other things right now that I really want to go and do. It just helps you say no to things. It helps you not be rude to people because you understand where they're coming from, and it helps you not kind of beat them up for things that they find important just because you don't.
Chris, I'm about to say, I know we talked about this a little bit last night, but what are yours?
This is interesting though, because like from a values standpoint, I go that next step higher and I go like, what actually matters in your life?
Yeah, you're looking at me like there's more.
I think
I'm getting a stare.
no, but you know what I think. What you're explaining there is eliminating all of the red light tasks, so you can only focus on the greens. Where you're saying, I don't like cooking, so let's delegate that or ditch that or drop that, whatever you were saying. So I think that's ultimate freedom, to be able to only do the things that actually mean something to you or you enjoy or you value.
I agree. Like I would agree to an extent, but I think it's only half. This idea of someone saying they feel lost and that they don't know what they want to do is really kind of what I would try and solve for with this idea. Because if you understand what you value, you understand what's important to you and what you're inspired and intrinsically motivated to do every day, and you could do this for 12, 24 hours a day. You could do it. And you don't need to go outside. You don't need external, like per se, you don't need external stimulation. You don't need sugar. Or you don't need things to kind of caffeine to keep you going at it. You just love doing it. And that there is, for me at least, that is a lot of happiness that can be derived from that. You're okay working through the problems that come with things that your most highest value is in accordance of. So yes, like of course it's helping you dump and delegate
fulfillment.
stuff. It's fulfillment. Yeah, that's the word.
I think happiness is probably the wrong term.
Mm.
Do you think happiness, the word itself, gets thrown around a bit?
Yeah, well, because it's very polarizing.
Oh, yeah.
Because
But the goal shouldn't be happiness.
No.
fulfillment's a better way to say it. Yes.
I feel like when you're working on things that get you inspired and you can do them without caffeine, without stimulants, by yourself, as he's drinking an awesome.
Yeah, no,
Oxy-shred.
Oxy-shred, highly caffeinated.
Is it caffeine?
It's caffeinated. It tastes great.
So,
I finished it.
So if you are working on those things and you have the ability to be able to do them no matter the circumstances and you love doing them, you can feel drained at the end of the day. But it's like a happy drained. It's like a whereas if you're doing something that's uninspiring, unmotivating, and you finish it or you're drained at the end of the day, it's like a
Yep.
You know when there's this concept of like new stress and de-stress. If you're doing something, and most things in life are hard. If you're really trying to work on something, it might be hard, and maybe you pick the different term, but they're difficult and they require energy, they require focus, and it requires thought. You know that if you're living in accordance with a value and you're doing a task that is kind of highest on that list, you'll finish the day and you'll almost feel better than when you started. You'll almost kind of have that fire inside of you that we've all kind of felt on some sort of project where you're like, man, like I'm really kind of jazzed up by this. I've just spent some ungodly amount of time doing this. I should be tired, but I'm ready to go, and this is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the flip side, which is like, man, I don't do this anymore. This is not good. Like, again, horrible example. Some people love gardening. Like, they garden all day. And that's the thing that they love to do. Man, like, if I'm out there gardening, I'm like 5 minutes in and I'm like yawning and this is not great.
Jack has no plants in his house.
Yeah, clearly not. But,
They would
it's,
die.
Again, maybe it's not the best example, but
It's a great example. I think of this thing that comes to mind is imagine failing at something that you hate.
right.
Oh my God. We were talking about this cooking as a chef. We were literally talking about this the other night. And I was like, we went to this place and it was this like place in Chapel Street. And, I was like literally thinking about this at like 2 a.m. or whatever. And this guy has to prepare all of these 5 meals for us at the table. And he or she has to make sure that they're all warm and they're all of quality, right? And has to dish them out at a certain timeline. And he's got probably 6 other tables to manage. And I'm like, I could never do that. And I would really be embarrassed if I even tried because I would fail.
Yeah, and but he loves it. But then when he looks at your business and he looks at the fact that you've got to manage a team, you've got to produce videos, like you run a content agency. He could sit there and go like, man, I couldn't imagine doing anything worse.
Yeah.
But that's just like leaning into your strengths. And also I'm more thinking about when you're not doing something that you love. Imagine doing something that you hate, you do not like doing, and failing at it.
Yeah, we're straying from your point, and I'm with you, which is like that is. I mean, I don't have words. It's just like it's the most demotivating.
I think failure is a cost for. Because I think when you fail, you learn more. If you choose to, you learn more than most things a lot of the time. If you fail at something, if you fail in a relationship, heartbreak, and if you break up, you have fundamentally, if you break up, you have failed in that relationship. That's a fact.
Yeah,
Really?
well, I would.
Really?
Yeah, how do we define that?
I would provide a different.
The relationship failed.
Well, you could view it as that, and maybe the relationship did fail, or there was an opportunity to move on from that relationship because you learnt something either about yourself or about the other partner, and then you made an active decision to say, you know what? I now am a better person because I know these things. I now have the opportunity to move on from this relationship, and I've now got another, call it battle stripe, on my shoulder when I'm walking into that next relationship because I now know what I don't want.
Yeah, but they also might be a better person as well.
But I also think you're defining failure very wrong in this instance. I think when you think about the goal, say you have a goal that you're striving towards, and you don't achieve that goal. It's in a sense a fail, right? When you're going into a relationship, what's the goal of that relationship? You want it to work, hence why you're doing it. If you break up, you've failed at achieving that goal. It's not that you don't learn, right? This is the thing I just said before this. I was saying how when you fail, it's like the biggest way for you to learn and grow. So yes, when you go through a breakup, you've determined that there's better for you. There is more of an opportunity for you to grow somewhere else. You've taken the heartbreak, you've taken the lessons, and you've grown and you've leveled up as a person. Still doesn't mean you didn't fail at that relationship. You've not failed in life, and you've not failed in relationships as the category. But fundamentally, you and that other person, your relationship has failed.
Right, but you said there was a goal of the relationship. When you get into a relationship, what is the goal?
I see myself spending the rest of my life with that person.
But it's marriage.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hence why breakups are
So,
failure.
yeah, if we said the goal was marriage, it's marriage in general. It's finding someone.
I don't think the goal is marriage. I think marriage is one of those things where you go, fuck, we've been together for 7 years. We kind of want our kids to have the same last name. May as well do that.
Maybe I have another way to frame it, which is the goal of relationships is to find that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with.
Romantic relationships, yes.
Right. So I guess the way I think about it is not a failure for that relationship to fail. If the ultimate goal was to use relationships as a tool to find the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with.
So you're not failing at relationships. As if we rewind the track, I said that you're not failing as relationships. That relationship fundamentally failed.
Yes.
Like-
yes.
like-
Okay,
Yes.
well, fine. I've been out Chris'd.
Yeah. No, it's not saying that you failed. Yeah, I understand.
We went on a tangent
So
here.
maybe we're saying the same thing, but I'm with the view of like, ultimately you probably have. You can look at. There's a lot of things that I do in a day that I would, technically I fail at them and I get them wrong and they're not good. But if you have something bigger that you're playing for, which most
a
people
macro picture.
Yeah, a macro picture of life in general and an understanding of like what's important. And to be able to zoom out, and I guess as you go through life, you kind of care less about things because you have more stripes on your shoulder and you understand that the things that you thought at 20, by the time you get to 30, weren't actually that big of a deal. Just like when you talk about a relationship, and you think that your relationship failed, which therefore
I'm a
your goal,
failure.
your goal of that relationship was to say find that, build that relationship into a long-term partnership or marriage, or vice versa. And you might say that because that faltered, then therefore you failed. But it's like, if you're able to zoom out to your point and have the macro picture of like, well, no. The goal of relationships is to be able to find that person that you spend the rest of your life with. Just like the goal of business is to be able to build, something that makes you financially independent. Just because that business failed does not make you a failure, does not make that business technically per se a failure, because you didn't fail at the ultimate goal. You're still working at it. You're still going.
You know what? I 100% agree. I'm fully aligned with that. And you'd be stupid to think that I'm talking like that it's like a long-term thing. Like a breakup doesn't mean you're fucked in relationships for life. It's not.
I hope not.
It's not that. But where I'm getting at with failure is, if you didn't mess up and make a mistake, or you fail at something little, a micro failure, you've won. You've won at this little thing. Because say you've done something successfully, or you've done something unsuccessfully. When you do something successfully, you are way less likely to look for the problems in that success because you've won. But when you are unsuccessful, you are definitely more inclined to look at that and go, where did that go wrong? And through that failure, or when you're unsuccessful, you're more inclined to learn and grow, because you're actually seeking answers. And so I'm talking about these little failures in our life shape us way more than the victories do, because the victories, we're not looking for where to get better, because we won in our head. So I'm saying that these little failures are the things that shape us more than anything in our life. And so being able to understand that in the moment and take these failures and go, where did I go wrong? As we said at the breakfast this morning, it's like, take ownership on everything. It's not anyone's fault. It's not how the media has painted me. It's me, and it's all on me. So then we seek answers and grow as a person. Time back to the dinner conversation. This guy's listening going, you guys talk a lot. Yeah, we have. But tie back to the dinner conversation about sharpening the sword in relationships. I think dating is really important, because I think it sharpens the sword of what you want, what you don't want, how to treat someone, how you act, who you want to be. And the way you learn all those is through these little failures. And that's all. Maybe the term failure is the one we should try and refrain from saying.
Well, yeah, like, I don't know. I think, because I used to do high performance rowing, right? And I used to look at the guys and girls at the top, going for the Australian team and, all around the world. And it's funny, like, I think their definition of success was different to every other team, and especially the winners, because what I'd see was, you would have these boats, right? For anyone who doesn't understand the context of rowing, right? Like, it's whoever's like further ahead is the absolute winner, right? And you'd have these boats that would be so far ahead of any other team, right? And I'd listen to their coaches talk to them after the race, and, the coach would be like talking as if it was a failure, really. Because their definition of success was never winning the race. It was all these micro adjustments that they were doing in their stroke, that they were collaborating as a team. And like, I guess that's what made them the best performing athletes in the races every single time. It was fascinating. Like, yeah, I mean, we didn't get to that stage as a state school when I was in school rowing. But
so where's the lesson in that?
It's interesting. I would call it, they had a really different definition of success, but I think the high-performing people can also look at the successes and find the little nitpicky things within the successes to make them even better next time. I think people break down successes just as much as they break down their failures.
Do you think that people aren't willing to change their definition of success, and it can cage them in a little bit? Do you think changing your definition of success in whatever you are trying to do is a bad thing?
I think it's hard, because you kind of set your own standards based on past experiences, and put it very broadly, kind of who you hang out with and what environment you're in. So if the people around you, for example, if you're hanging out with people who want to lose, just a weight example, 5 kilos, 5 kilos might seem like a lot. You're like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to shoot for that. You hang around that same person, but then they say, oh, they want to shoot for 15 kilos. You automatically feel bad saying 5.
Literally.
Because they're now going for 15. I mean, we're talking about,
Worse in the room.
Yeah, a half marathon, and then they were talking about a full marathon the other day. And it's like, I felt bad for saying a half marathon was good, because now we're talking about a full marathon, and then we're talking about high rocks and the whole thing. So your standards raise, I think, just based on the individuals you're with, based on the kind of game that you want to play. It's very hard, I think, for someone to sit there and say, no, I think 15 is kind of the goal that I should be shooting for. Well, based on what? Like, how do you actually prove to yourself that that is a standard that you should be shooting for? As I said, I moved to the US, and people in a place like New York have very high standards. The standard of success there is meaningfully higher than a place like Brisbane.
Yep.
And it was probably one of the best things for me, because I went and I spent time with people who I knew when I had a conversation with them, and I told them what I was doing and kind of the goals that I had, and like raising money from a US investor. And you kind of tell them that you want your business to grow, maybe 2x over the next year. For some people here, 2x is it's a good business growth. Whereas over there, it's like, nah, man, 10x, 20x. Like how do we get there? And what's the goal? And how are you going to do that? And like that becomes the conversation. That becomes the lens of and a success that you start to look through. So it's very hard, and moving, getting around new people, setting new expectations, and then also proving to yourself that when you have these conversations with people and you set these goals, that you can follow through with them. And this might start with really simple things. Just proving to yourself that you can get up a little bit earlier, proving to yourself that we can eat better, we can eat more salad rather than I don't know, pizza. Yeah, it's just these micro wins that kind of compound. But you start to play this bigger game when people around you are just talking different languages, and you sit there and you go, man, I resonate with that, and it's the path I want to follow.
Yeah, well, I better say that also comes back to the values question, which I asked you before, and you dodged very strategically. But I better say what we were talking about last night with values is, for me, relationships and connection is probably one of my highest values, I guess you could call it, or whatever you want to, deem it my thing, right? And I think without those, I would not have even learnt, things like believing you can do a full marathon, right? I don't think I would have thought, I could have been wrong, but without hanging around you guys, and we're all feeding off each other in that energy, and I'm believing I can do it. And I'm sure everyone else is. And then the half becomes not enough. And you go to the full, and then you go to the high rocks, and then you go to the... And like that part is just, in terms of bettering yourself and bettering all the people around you. Like, I mean, I'm about to say, in our context as a group, I think we all really build each other up in an amazing way.
And I also think what's awesome is there's different areas that people can thrive in. And like a prime example is some of my friends that might be extremely good in health and not so much in business. When I start hanging out with them, all of a sudden my health becomes a priority, and I'm training every day and I'm in the best shape in my life. I'm not really focusing on business. You hang out with people that are strictly business, and all of a sudden you work longer days and don't train, and you don't fit in that gym session as easy as you used to.
Yeah.
Right. Or you hang out with someone, and this is most people, that aren't big at business or health, and they're not driven. And then they wonder why they are feeling like they're in a cage.
Yeah.
And it's because your friend group is not a group, it's a cage. Like you're caged in to the constraints of what everyone around you is doing. And I think that's why I just love this rising tide concept, where everyone's trying to better each other. And as the tide rises, all the boats do too. And I just think it's so important to make sure that you're checking in on the people around you. And are they actually making you feel inspired, or are they making you feel drained? I call it couch friends and treadmill friends. do your friends, ask yourself this question, do your friends want to make you want to run on a treadmill or sit on a couch? Because if you leave that interaction and you want to go and sit on a couch because you're drained, that tells you something about your friend group. When you leave that conversation with your friends, do you feel energized, alive? You are not sleeping anytime soon. You just need to work out, train, do business, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
they're treadmill friends. They're good ones. You want to keep them around. I think everyone around us should be inspiring us to level up.
I would say, and to extend your thought, I have, through my own life, kind of had friends that you have to, I've heard on podcasts numerous times, you've said it very well. And I sit there and I resonate with that. If I was listening to this from home, I'd be like, I'm with you and I agree. It's really hard, and I've tried to implement. I know you've been through it as well. It's like it's really hard to implement that when you're in a social setting. You have a friend, say it's someone from school, and man, like you've been friends for a number of years, and maybe they might not be a close friend, but they're someone that you kind of spend time with, and you get to that point where you realize that relationship is not really serving you anymore, and you have to make that decision and kind of create a plan on how to move away from that relationship. The thing that's helped me, more than anything in that dynamic, is you can take two paths. First is you can look at them. You can say, I don't like what you're doing anymore. I don't think that's right. I think it's wrong. I think you should be spending more time on this rather than that. And then therefore, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, to put it very bluntly. I think that's how a lot of people try and go about it. Another path that has worked is you could say, I understand why you're prioritizing those things right now. I get how they're actually working within your own value set. Say it's social influence. They really value social influence at that point in time. And you value business more. They are, when they speak to you, going to push social influence as a priority. Just like, the same friends around fitness. They're going to push fitness as the priority for you. And you can kind of take the path to say, like, I don't think you should be doing anything else apart from that. I've just got a different set of values in my own life that I want to prioritize at the moment. We're not really in accordance and sync at the minute, and that's cool. That's all right. Like it's fine. So I'm just going to make an active choice not to spend that much time with you anymore. I'm going to take a choice just to kind of distance myself. But man, you keep doing you, and like I'm going to do me. And, like I'd like, because I value different things, I'm going to inject myself onto you and say, like, you should come and do these more business related things. But everyone does it. Anyway, so I found that the second path there, for me at least, has really helped kind of accelerate just this ability to move on. It's kind of love them for who they are, accept the fact that they have kind of this just different set of values, and those values may have changed over time. You might have been in sync once during school because you both valued social influence at that time, and that's what you related over. Now you don't really value it that much, and they're just on a different path, and you get to move on.
Yeah. And I better say, sometimes I feel like for a lot of listeners, because I was in this perspective, and I'm sure we all have been, is sometimes you actually don't know as well. Like, depending who you're talking to, there might be subtleties in what they say and how they act that you're subconsciously, it's you're absorbing that energy, but you actually might not know.
You know what I think it is when it comes back to friends that you've been around with for a long time, is when you're at school, it is forced time spent with each other. You get to hang out with 30 people in your class or your grade or whatever it is, and that is it. And you spend 8 hours every single day with these people. You're doing the same classes, you're learning the same subjects, you have the same shitty teachers that you can talk about. Your PE class is the same, and you get to go and have fun and run around on the oval. You get to have a free dress day, and you get to relate and talk about what you're going to wear that day. You have all these things that you can relate on with these friends. So what happens is you form friendships, because you have all these relationships, that all these relatabilities that you can form friends with. Then you leave school and you get a little bit distance from them, but you start to meet more people. And what you find with these people that you meet, because you realize there's more than just 30 people in this world, you start to meet more people and you go, oh, should I actually get along with this person a lot more? And to be expected, right? And then what happens is all of the things that your friends at school were built on, which was relatabilities, drop off because you don't have those teachers to talk about anymore. You don't have the same life that you're living. You're doing different uni degrees, or maybe one's dropped out or one's gone traveling. There's a lot less to relate on, and you're meeting all these other people That's why the friends change. I think the forced time spent with each other at school is the reason why we even become friends in the first place. How can you expect to get put in a room with 30 people in the whole world, and I'm using 30 just as a number. How can you expect to be put in a room with 30 people in the whole world and think that you can form best friends with them? It's not a real friendship. It's not. Like you just haven't met more people that are more aligned, or you haven't opened yourself up enough, or you're too scared to open yourself up to meet new people. I genuinely believe it is a very, very rare thing to find your tribe in school.
Well, didn't you and Sam go to school together?
Nah,
Oh, no. Okay.
played footy together, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm about to say, that's rare, even coming from a footy club. Like, that's a very small circle of people. Like,
But there's similar interests there that are fundamental interests that I
sport?
actually think are values aligned. Is we were dedicated semi-professional athletes that were playing at the only academy in the Gold Coast for AFL. So there is a lot more interest aligned there, which makes a lot more sense, I think, because we have this dedication. We know what hard work is like. We know what doing work when no one is watching is like. We've had these values from footy drilled into us from a very young age, and those are pretty universal skills that we'll probably use for the rest of our life. So I think it's a little bit different, but I do understand what you're saying. Yeah.
well, I better say, it also brings to the concept of like, not isolation, but being very selective with the people you hang out with. Like, for me, I could literally probably less than one hand of fingers, like count how many people I would actually be close with and value aligned with in the whole world. Like, do you guys agree? You got the similar?
You know what's interesting though is we're so young, and
You don't know.
I think we're still going to meet people that are more, and I think we have to recognize that we're still going to meet people that are more like us.
Well, I've already found that I'm not values aligned with you this trip.
We found that in multiple occasions. And also, like, to be fair, Chris, we met like a month ago, by the way, literally a month ago. And I prior to that, I hadn't heard Jack talk about you, and I hadn't seen your stuff, so I didn't know you existed. And so I wouldn't have known. So you're right, the opportunity to meet, beautiful people.
I think, sorry, not to interject.
No, not at all.
This uncomfortable feeling of I don't feel like I have the right circle, I don't feel like I have the right friends, I don't feel like I'm the right place in my life. The general feeling of I don't feel like something is right, per se, is the motivation for many people that pushes them to go to that networking event or go to that run club or go to the event where they actually have the opportunity and put themselves out there to meet people that are more aligned with their own values. And without that feeling, that again, like some people may deem that as failure because they haven't got the right friendship circle at the minute, or they might beat themselves up, back to our conversation, and then they use that kind of feeling of not feeling like they're in the right circle to feel bad and then not channel that motivation into doing something about it. I think it's okay to not feel okay. If anything, there's probably just more of a lesson in it. And so I totally agree that if you went through school and you never felt like the 30 kids in your class were the right fit, odds are they weren't. That pushed you then at university to say, hey, look, I'm going to go meet some new friends. And at university, maybe those friends were there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So then after uni, you figured, you know what? They were there for a reason. We had things in common. We could talk about stuff that was going on. We could go to those uni parties together. There were things that we both got out of that relationship. So we were in fair exchange when we hung out with each other. They got as much out of the relationship as I did. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been friends at the time. But circumstances have changed. I'm now looking for something else. And because I feel like I don't have those people in my life, I've now actually got the motivation to go out and start looking.
And if you don't have the motivation, fucking good. You're human. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. I love when Jocko Willink says, good. Take ownership. Like, you're not supposed to be motivated all the time. It's not enough. Like, you need to keep going when you don't want to do it, when you don't enjoy doing that stuff. Fucking good. Own it. You're human. You don't need any medication. You don't need all of this. Like, you just need to keep pushing forward even when you don't want to do it. And I think that's where the power comes in, because when we talk about what actually matters, I think this is a really interesting way to tie this into this concept around it's when people say it's not about the destination, it's the journey. And I don't agree with that. I think it's the character that you are building on the journey that actually matters.
You said sharpen your sword. We also spoke about earning your stripes and adding those battle scars to your shoulder. Like that is who you are as a human being. And we've also spoken about failure and this ability to kind of, work through procrastination and all the things. But it's kind of like at the end of the day, like who you become is the sum of what you've been through. The thing that I find most interesting in anyone is not the success that they've been through in life and all the triumphs. It's the shit that didn't go wrong. That's what makes the conversation. That's what makes someone. And frankly, I genuinely believe that's what builds respect when someone meets you for the first time or someone really gets to know you. And if you want to be around people who kind of also been through the shit and, they've also kind of had these past similar shared experiences, that is what really builds a friendship, and that's what builds a bond above and beyond the success and the glam and stuff that comes with stuff working. It's the stuff that didn't work that actually builds kind of the reason to spend time with someone or the reason to want to really connect with them.
You become useful.
Yeah, it's true. I agree.
Let's not. Yeah, let's
agree.
Yeah. Let's not sugarcoat it.
It's a bit blunt, but yeah.
But that's what you said. You talk.
No,
about
but
that,
no,
you
but
know?
you
You say that.
But you become useful because now you can relate to someone because you've actually been through shit. You've gone from a low place and you've made it to a high place. And there is someone in that low place, not someone, thousands of people in that exact place that you were in. And they would love to know how you got to where you are. You become useful because now you've just put a badge on your shoulder that you can say, that says, I can help you. And I think that's what it's about. I honestly think it's what it's about. When you can truly go from place A to place B and you can provide a way and you can look back and know, okay, that's exactly how I did it. That right there is the nugget of gold that can then help other people get from A to point B.
It's funny though. It's like literally the most simple, it's the most simple to explain, the hardest to do. Right?
How is that the hardest to do?
Well, when you actually have to put pencil to paper, and it's like something I saw, I can't remember who made it, but it's like a 10%, 30%, 60. And it's like 10% of the time are the happiest days of your life or the most purposeful days of your life. 30% is that, I guess 80% happiness, purposefulness, and then the rest is shit, right? The rest is you're in the trench, right? And staying consistent through all of that is not easy. I know you would both have stories of that too. I definitely remember even starting my production agency after leaving Disputify, the startup we were doing. The amount of days that I felt I was literally working from a basement for a year and a half, and it was my parents' basement, and a lot of fake it till you make it. But I did not see sun for a very long time, and I would guarantee that it was 90% of the time that I was not living the days that made me the most happy or purposeful, or I guess purposeful is not the word because I knew I was building something. But
I think that scale of 60, 30, 10, I think that's relevant for chapters in your book, but not the whole book. Because I think if more of your life is shit than good, it's not worth reading. I want more highs, baby. I want the highs. I don't want it all to be lows. But I recognize that some chapters are basically lows. But the great thing about that is that's actually where the high comes from. Because the only place there is a high is when you can compare it to something else.
yes,
It's just like how the pendulum swing, right? And if it swings one way, it's going to swing the other. So the more it swings one, it's going to swing the other. Lower lows, bigger highs.
yeah.
It is literally the I mean, you know this because you hear me talk about it all the time, Will. But it is like the thing that I have in the back of my mind, and it's I should probably like get a tattoo about it or something. And
Don't get a tattoo.
I mean, I'm 22, so I don't think it's perfect, but it's just served me well, which is this concept of anything in life where you're elated, you're happy, and you're giddy. More often than not, you find that either the next hour or the next day, you're exactly the polar opposite of that high on the other end of that pendulum. And the most basic example, we spoke about alcohol, is that.
Explain that example, because everyone wasn't in the car when you were explaining that.
Well, it's like when you drink and you feel great. And the more you drink, the better you feel. It's like, the more you drink, though, the bigger the hangover. Or even if you have no hangover, you just don't feel the same the next day. And if you were to look at life like that, where you look at a gambling win or someone who's won the lotto, they're really happy. Like, everything will work. My life is now a success and all will be well. And you ask that same person, like, is that how that actually went? It's like, no, it was just as shit as it was good. It went the other way to balance me out. It's like when someone's crying on the side of a road, someone will come up to them and they will console that person more often than not. But when someone's sitting there screaming, I'm the happiest person in the world, you're probably going to get a hamburger thrown at you. Someone's going to try and humble you. So in every single social situation, there is kind of this bringing back to this equilibrium. In every single kind of business success or loss, there's this bringing back to the equilibrium. Life kind of works in a way where, well, it's fine. If you can find kind of the midpoint in everything, I want to live my life where, yeah, there's certain points where I'm able to kind of succeed and kind of grow to a new level, but it's not out of this kind of false, giddy, kind of one-sided perception of how my life should be perfect or I should be happy and I should not be sad. And now I don't want to feel kind of polar opposites of each one of those emotions. I want to be able to kind of find what that mid-ground looks like, where if I perceive myself feeling sad, like I want to go have a cry about something, instead of going to cry about it, it's trying to really think about, like, what is the thing I'm actually upset about? How did that thing serve me? What were the benefits in the thing that I perceive to be bad? Because it was an action. It was something that happened. Someone might perceive that thing as being really good. Someone might perceive that thing as being really bad. So the only thing I can control is my perceptions of reality. So if I can really just spend time trying to go through life and just not being on a roller coaster every single day, feeling kind of up and down and up and down, and being able to kind of find the good and the bad and the bad and the good, and just being able to say, like, yeah, like, life happens, stuff happens, like, I'm here with you guys. Like, I'm not feeling, again, all happy about it, and I'm not sad about it. It's just like, there are benefits and drawbacks to everything. I know you want to say something, but there are benefits and drawbacks to everything, and yeah, man, I'm only 22, but again, if I could get that pendulum swing, which is probably the best kind of visualization of it, I've got one on my desk. It literally just kind of pendulum swings all day, and it's a reminder of exactly what I want my life to not be.
See, I kind of disagree.
Ooh.
And here's why.
Go on.
I think, look, I think there's maybe a balance in between the extreme and then finding zero, right? And finding the homeostasis, as I would like to call it. I would never run my life trying to meet in the middle. I want to experience the highs so that the lows feel low, but then when the lows feel low, the highs also feel really high, and you live and you get to feel. So, I mean, and maybe if you wanted to clarify what that means, because I'm assuming you're not trying to just go down the line the whole time, because that's just, you're not living, right?
Yeah, I think if you think of it more as just a straight line, you never grow, you never change, you never evolve, you never feel anything. It just feels a bit kind of plain and vanilla, and life would be plain and vanilla.
Emotionless.
It's emotionless,
Yes.
right? So what I'm also trying to say is you've kind of got the midpoint, and then you've got a boundary up and down, where what I'm trying to do is not, how some people sit in bed for months and they'll kind of perceive that something really bad has happened to them, and it's an action. Something has happened, and they themselves sit there, and maybe by a court of all the people around them, everyone else will label that thing as a really, really bad thing, and they believe that, and they sit there and they let the thing run their life. I look at that and I say, I don't want an action or something to have control over me, whether it's really good or whether it's really bad. So if there's any control that I do have, It's how I think about it. And just to be able to say like, hey man, like I'm human, like stuff happens. And here is just kind of the other side. What is the flip side of the coin? And just so I can go through life, just not again on this huge roller coaster of, kind of absolute being elated all the time and then being down in the dumps and then being elated and then down in the dumps. And then just constantly back and forward, back and forward. It's like, I want to be able to go through life and grow as quickly as possible. I want to be able to experience as much as there is, but I want to do that in a way that is almost as efficient as possible, without kind of just these, I feel like sitting in bed is probably a setback, without these kind of things that lead to setbacks in my life. I'm just trying to find a framework that works, and it's worked for me so far. I'm very much open to challenge on how it's going to work over the long term.
You know what I think? I think that framework is really useful in business, but I don't think business is life. And I think business is what allows you to unlock quite a fruitful life, but I don't think it's life. I think riding the emotional roller coaster of highs and lows is a very bad thing to do in business, because I think if you take it in the perspective of, say, like a day of work and you're trying to be productive, if you celebrate the highs, you're going to dread the lows. So in that context of making sure you can be neutral with your emotions throughout the day, that's really powerful. But the next thing I'll say to this is when we take it to a life thing where we get swept up in the bad or swept up in the highs. A feeling is only a feeling because of what feelings you've felt in the past. So the low that you're going through is relative to the lows that you've been through in the past. If you do not go through any lows, why do you think a baby cries when it doesn't have the right flavored ice cream? It's because it hasn't experienced a lower low than that. So that is a sad thing for them. And it's the same with the highs, is when you experience a high, you hit your first $1 million. How good's it feel? But then when you hit another $1 million, it doesn't feel the same. But that's because you're comparing it to a high that you've already had. And so I think what we need to understand in terms of my approach to life is I think in the games in which we are playing in our life, like business, we need to control those emotional roller coasters in the best interest of business. But being able to switch off and recognize that the lows are what make the highs highs, and the highs are going to make the lows lows. But when you go through enough lows, it takes a lot to get beaten up. Like when you keep going through so much shit, it takes a lot more to be phased. And so I think now when you can reframe this and go, I'm in a low now, that means it's going to be harder for me to get in this spot again. It's quite a powerful spot to be in. And honestly, when I get slammed on my face now, I would say that 95% of those times, I just start laughing. Because I've been through so much shit and I just go, oh, fuck, I'm painting the story. Like I'm making the story even better. And I think, honestly, if you're dreading over things, you have not been through enough things. So fucking live.
Well, I mentioned before this idea of, when you're 20 and you have a breakup, I say this is 22, but it's like when you're 20 and you have a breakup with someone, it seems like a really kind of meaningful, bad, life-altering thing at that minute. It's really bad. Whereas, that same breakup, when you've had 10 of them, by the time you get to 30, it's just kind of like, yeah, I've been through this one before. This is like, kind of like, this is number 11. And it's almost like everything in life. And not to relate it back to what I was saying, but it's like you kind of like, you understand. I mean, you were saying before, it's just kind of like the things that you perceive to be so bad aren't actually that bad anymore, because you've just kind of earned the stripes and you're moving through life. And I guess the approach they have is more so just with you. And it's just trying to say like, okay, cool. If I can have, like, again, this is the same action, it's the same breakup. But if in that moment, like the breakup has happened, but I actually perceive kind of, instead of just saying, hey, it's really bad, I'm not going to be with this person anymore, everyone else is telling me that it's a really bad thing, they've done something to me, and say I'm the victim by all accords. Instead of kind of taking that mentality, because the action's the same, you can just say like, hey man, like those things have happened. Yep, those are the downsides. Cool, got it. But what are some of the upsides? in what's happened.
I would say that I'm just going to cut you off there. I would
Go.
say that the relationships is a really, really bad example.
Is that right?
And
it's quite a better one then.
no. And the reason I'm saying relationships is a really bad example, and like, this
I
is
love
what
you. I love you so much.
I think it's a horrible example, and I'll explain my thoughts now. Is that what did we speak about last night at the table about relationships and dating?
Or many of things.
Well, we
You
spoke
pick it.
about sharpening the sword.
Right.
Reps.
And we spoke about love is what you know love to be. And so I would argue that the 10th breakup when you're 30 is far different to the breakup when you're 20. It's not the same thing. Because if you've gone through all these breakups, every single one of those, if you've chose to learn from it and you've looked within and you've gone, okay, what do I want and what do I not want? You've sharpened the sword. So when you get to that breakup 30 and at 30, you've got a really good understanding about what you want and what you don't want. And the likelihood of you thinking like that one is the one, because I've got so many things in the past that I've realized, okay, this is not what I want. This is what I want. And this person ticks all of those boxes. And then you guys break up. That is way more painful. And that's why I think like love is only relative to what you've experienced in the past. And that's the problem when it comes to going in through breakups later on in life, is because you've sharpened that sword, you've taken another punt, and then you've been heartbroken even more than that. And that's when you start getting these thoughts, fuck, am I ever going to meet someone? And you get in these heads. So I agree with the message you're saying. I just had to pull up on the relationships thing and think that was a bad example.
Yeah. I think life, generally speaking, we've kind of touched on this, but life is all about perceptions. Because there are like, man, like you think about, maybe business is a better one. You think about what someone like Mark Zuckerberg goes through every day. I mean, the guy just literally last week released a letter saying that he allowed or he accepted the fact that the US government had meddled in the previous COVID-19, call it case that happened. And in that, the government had actually told him that he should censor certain things. And they had always said that wasn't the case. And now they've actually kind of come out and said that. Now, for anyone to admit something like that on that scale, for anyone, is a really, really big deal, because you've been lying, now you're not lying, and it's a really big thing. You think about the stuff that he'd go through, that's one example. But you think about what he deals with day to day. You think about what Elon Musk deals with day to day. For a lot of people, they would perceive a lot of the stuff that goes on as really hard or really bad. You pick the word. There's perception on all of it. So I think my reference, and not to go back to dating, is I think your perception of other people's actions just changes over time as you're able to kind of see some of the benefits in what they're actually doing. Like, for example, Elon won't just purely treat, an employee leaving as all bad. The key person in Tesla left tomorrow. Earlier in the day, or earlier in his period of life, he might have perceived that as the worst thing on planet Earth, because like, oh my God, we're screwed. Now he looks at it and he goes, well, probably there's other opportunities to find someone else. Now he's a bigger audience and, there's more opportunity now, but he perceives that thing being very different. And you take everything else away, his mindset has just evolved. So again, not to relate it back to dating, but I think that you perceive things differently as you sharpen your sword, as you earn those stripes. And the things that you perceived as all bad and the stuff that would want to make you cry and crawl up in your bed and say, this person's not the one, we're done. You look past a lot of that because you understand what you're looking for. And you're also a different person where you can say like, hey, there are actually, as much as there's stuff that I don't like about what they do, there is stuff that I do really like about what they do. And there are even benefits in the things that I don't like. So you can still see both sides, and maybe that comes through time, it comes through wisdom. And the thing that I'm trying to do is kind of fast forward a lot of that, where I don't have to go through the thing happening 10 times to say, okay, now this is actually what I really want. It's being able to just kind of understand. I'm getting a smile.
No, I agree. I agree all of it. I just think about someone we both know, Michael Lane. He said earlier on in his career, he would have bad months. Later on in his career, he would have bad weeks. Then he had bad days. Then he had bad hours. And now he has bad moments.
Yeah.
And I think that is summing up what you're saying perfectly there. It's the more you live through shit, the easier you can deal with the shit, the more you realize that life, this too shall pass, life goes on, no one's dying, and then you can dread on the stuff for a lot less period of time. And I just love it when he frames it like that, because it's basically taking this complex situation and thought process into a time period in which you can really easily digest. And it's so true. It's like we're sweating over things that we probably shouldn't be sweating on, because the reason we shouldn't be sweating on these things is because what benefit does it have sweating on these things? What value does it provide? Is there any? Is there any value? I don't think there is. And so if we can recognize the benefits of us thinking negatively, we'll move on quickly. Because what we'll find is we won't find any benefits.
100%.
Yeah, well, I'm about to say just real quick, because we looked at each other for two different reasons. So when you were saying that, like, a bit of context, I was a younger brother in a family to an older brother who made a lot of, well, not mistakes, but, you know, if he's watching. He made mistakes as the first brother of the family, right? And I'm sure as you as the older brother of the family would have made mistakes, right?
Yep.
And for a long time, I looked up to him and I analyzed everything he was doing, and I lived my life to not make the same mistakes that he did. And so I felt like I was fast tracking myself through life to be able to not make the same mistakes that he did. But then I'm at a stage now where I'm on my own path in, you know, I'm not tied to what the family's doing per se, and as we all are on our own path in life. And I'm also now looking like I kind of want to make the mistakes. I want to live and feel those things. Like, I don't want to avoid things that are potentially inevitable because they might, and I don't think this is what you're saying, but like, just because they might bring some pain, they might, you know, you might perceive it as a setback.
Chris, you're 22.
Yeah.
You're the same age as me. You've got decades to live. You've got decades to build experience. You've got decades to continue to walk a path. Many people will watch this, and Will is 23. So many people will watch this and they'll say, you're in your 20s, all of you, you've got absolutely no idea what you're speaking about. And like, I will be the first person to say, like, I don't have decades of lived experience to talk through. So when I look at you and I look at how much you've done in 22 years of your life, kind of how many lives many people would perceive that you've lived, what you've kind of worked through and what you've gone through.
All of us.
Sure. When you look at the next kind of decade and you look at some of the experiences that you want to have, where you want to double down, where you want to improve, where you want to learn, what comes to mind?
I cannot look that far. I think honestly, and the reason I can't, I can say things that I want, and I can read you after this podcast. If I had it here, I'd read it to the audience. But I can read you my dream days and the person I want to become and the things I want to have in 10 years' time. I can read you all that stuff. But I don't think that's useful at all to anyone. There is no value in knowing, in you guys, in people understanding where I want to be. These are like personal things that I want to feel and live. I think when I look at the goals and the things that I want to achieve, it's more of a life. Like Lewis talks about this, and John DeMartini talks about this all the time, where it's not about goals, it's not about experiences. It's about, like, what does an average Tuesday look like for you in 10 years' time?
Yeah.
How do you want to be living your dream life?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that motivates me more than anything else. It's not goals. It's not like experiences or places I want to visit. It's like when I'm sitting on my balcony watching, or as I shuffle myself up to a seated position in my king size bed with silk sheets, as the automatic curtains are opening up, as the sun is rising in my house in Palm Beach in the Gold Coast, and my wife taps me on the shoulder, kisses me on the cheek and says, "Good morning, babe." And I'm watching the sunrise in a beautiful sunny day. Like, and it's an average Tuesday, and I'm going to I'm then going and running down to the beach and swimming and washing my face with some sand, and then running back up and having a shower. And then once we drop the kids to school in my all black Rolls Royce Cullen, and I come back and prepare for my podcast episode that I'm going to record. Now, today's guest is a guy that lives out by the rock at Uluru, has no social media, and he's a caveman, but he absolutely loves his life. And I'm just speaking to him because I'm genuinely curious. Like, that is what excites me, right? It's not about and like, even just being able to explain that in that way very quickly, you can probably understand that I've actually wrote it and I've thought about it and it's clear in my mind. And so goals are an interesting one for me. I don't really like, my goals are like life goals. How do I want to live?
Yeah.
That's like I can feel that. And I think that's what matters for me. And I like to look at the lens of how does, with everything I'm doing, is what's the feeling that is bringing as well.
First of all, black Rolls Royce Cullinan, good choice.
Okay.
Second, well, you've already answered this question because we had this conversation the other day. Actually, no, it was yesterday at a cafe. How close are you? Because I'm sure you would have visualized that and you have a very clear idea in your head. How close are you to that right now?
You're asking me.
I'm asking you.
Okay. I have a document, and it was done at John DeMartini's course, and it literally labels it hour by hour. And what's shockingly simple, and for anyone watching this, it is like if you have half an hour or 45 minutes, it literally doesn't take that long. You literally just write every hour, and you write down, if you could do anything in a day, no restrictions whatsoever, what would you do? Like, what would you actually do? It's also a very useful tool to figuring out what you value, because you're going to pick the things that you value. You'll do those on your dream day. To answer your question, I think I'm broadly close. The thing that I miss at the moment is kind of the project to work on. So as I said, like, I'm unemployed for the first time in my life in years. Ever since I can remember. Like, I started working on my first business when I was like ever since dude, even in school, like, I'm selling lollies to kids and trying to employ kids to do things illegally, like, as in like, you can't employ kids to do anything. So yeah, technically it's illegal, but I'd always be working on something. And it's for the first time in my life where I don't have that thing. So my dream day looks very similar to Chris's, where it's you kind of get up, but instead, like, I'm getting up, I'm going for a run, I'm having breakfast, I'm walking with someone who's close to me. I'm going back, I'm opening the laptop and I'm doing work, and I'm working all the way through to lunch. I have a light lunch, I get back to work, I get in my Porsche Taycan Turbo S and I drive to dinner. I have dinner again with family or someone who's really close to me, and I go back and I get to bed. If I could do that every single day of the week, amazing. But the thing that I don't have at the moment is, what is the work? Like, what is the thing? Because business is my most important value. I don't have the thing at the moment. So I guess I'm close per se, but I'm also very far, because you need the thing that's going to fill the day. And that's what I'm searching for at the moment.
Interesting answer.
Yeah. And I guess on that note, what would be a really cool way to kind of close this one out is I kind of want to ask you guys a bit more of a vulnerable question. And I guess it's like and what you're explaining there, Jack, is life after having earned a fair bit of money, and you're in this position where you have just been at it for so long, and you're at this stage now where you've kind of got all of the things, but the one thing that you do not have is the thing to work on and progress to, and to keep growing in that area of business, which is your highest value. Money aside, like, what would you say your biggest challenge would be in life right now?
I think it's discovering not who I am, but where I want to spend the next 10 years of my life personally. What is the project? What is the thing that I can pick and I can give everything to? What is something that I can find that I do genuinely feel that it's not just going to benefit me financially, so I don't need it per se, but what is the thing that I actually feel like is going to leave some sort of legacy, or some sort of fulfillment that goes beyond me and something that actually has some sort of positive effect. So the thing that I did previously was we did instant refunds for retail brands. And now it's exciting. It gives people their money back straight away and it's good. But it's not leaving some sort of it's not curing cancer. It's not, kind of going above and beyond. And by no means do I want to cure cancer next, but I really want to find that thing that I can do. I'm 22. And the thing that people keep telling me is that I have time. But there's a certain cohort of people who say that I don't have time. And the time goes very quickly. And you'll look and you'll be 32. You'll look and you'll be 42. You'll look and you'll be 70. And you'll be sitting there going man, I just kind of floundered around. I didn't find anything that genuinely actually helped people or made some sort of positive impact or did something that was really fundamentally different. So trying to balance, we spoke about opportunity cost and trying to find something, find the thing to say yes and no to. Trying not to say yes to things that feel kind of clear and certain in the moment that might be the next thing, but kind of don't tick all the boxes. But also being okay with not having a thing to work on at the moment. And that is hard because I said I can't live a dream day in my mind until I have that thing that I'm actually inspired to go and work on and sink my teeth into.
And why do you think you need that thing? Like if you said earlier about business being that thing that unlocks that financial freedom and that ability to kind of live this fruitful life and do what you want and have all the money in the world to be able to do that. If money becomes not the problem, then what are you doing the business for?
I love solving problems. I love creating things that people, can actually use and that something like creating things that are useful. And if I'm not creating something that's useful, I don't feel like I am being useful. So beyond the money is the product of being able to do those things well. It is the fundamental of just knowing that you're sitting down and building something that someone can use, someone can love, and if they don't love it, you have things there to do to make sure that they do.
And I guess just one follow-on question from that is, what do you think is the number one thing in your life that makes you feel the best? So what is something that happens? I asked you this at a dinner last night, Will. But what do you think is the thing that makes you feel the best in your life, where you jump up and down more than anything, or you get a certain feeling in your chest or about something? Is there anything that comes to mind?
You spoke about before, being in the shit, and we've spoke about the concept of earning your stripes and having those stripes on your shoulders. It's when you have those private victories and you've kind of worked through things that no one has seen. And there are even things that you forget that in the moment are really meaningful and were really hard, and you just perceive them to be difficult, and you got through them and you worked through them. And there are these stack up of private victories that maybe turned into something that became public. Or maybe it was still now a private victory, but you kind of know that you got past some point. You appreciate that it might be 0.1 of 10, but you've got somewhere. And I've got to the point where I don't need people to tell me that I'm doing well, or I don't need people to pat me on the back, but it's that feeling inside of you that you describe that you get when you understand that you have gotten to the point that maybe 6 or 12 months ago or 10 years ago, you looked at and said, man, if I get there one day, man, I'd be really proud of myself. It's that.
Because in that context, it's the victories and and so the feeling you're describing is when you get a win, and that's probably, and I understand that would probably be your biggest feeling of the thing that feels the best. The thing that comes to mind there, though, as you're explaining, because you've been through the shit, it's the feeling that is so positive is the feeling of the fact that you deserve that win because you've actually been through it. And this is why when you talk about someone winning the lotto, they can go through massive spirals of depression because they, A, don't feel deserving of the money, so they blow it. And B, their concept of earning money gets skewed. So they can't go and work a normal job now because their way of achieving money. So when you feel deserving of something, it's an amazing feeling. And that's why when you talk about these lows, I just go back to the lows. And I think about whenever I'm in those lows. I remember I was journaling one time, and I remember I was just writing. I was like, you're feeling it again, aren't you? I was just like, once again, one of those times that no one sees, because there's so many of them, right? It's like those times where the main feeling you are having is loneliness. And it's not like, as you said earlier, it's not loneliness in the sense that you're not getting enough attention. It's not loneliness in the sense that not enough people around you. It's just the fact that no one understands you. Like you have no one to relate to. You have no one you can call that just can speak to you and just say, look, man, I get it. I know the feeling. And like, I go back to those times when I feel like that to then when I win and I go back to those times, I go, I fucking deserve this. This life that I've achieved, this goal that I've achieved, this little victory, public or private, I fucking deserve this. And I think that is the feeling that you're describing when you go, I feel really good about this.
Absolutely. And the closest relationships that I have formed in my life are the people that you could pick up the phone to when you felt a certain way, when you felt down, when there was a problem that you're like, man, it's a pretty big one. And it's like, you don't know how to solve it. And in those moments there, it is who do you actually want to talk to? And then how does that person respond? How do they listen? How do they want to help? And you always want to be able to pay it forward. And the thing that I guess defines me now is I never liked, like, it's maybe selfish, but it's like I never liked when someone picked up the phone and kind of dumped their problems on me. I still don't. But I have a newfound appreciation. He's still being so young. I have a newfound appreciation for when someone picks up that phone and they say, hey, like, I've got a problem and I'm trying to solve it. And man, like, I just don't know. I don't know. And for me, it was the people who took the time to be able to just kind of work it through, see it play out over a couple of months, watch you take those steps and take those missteps as well. You're like, it just didn't work. And it's like, all right, back to the drawing board. And you just work through it. So it's those friendships that you look back on and when you win and, you know, like you cheers or kind of however way you'd want to celebrate with those people, like that's the crew. They're the ones, even though you achieved the victory, it was because of having them there, and maybe they didn't do anything, but they were there for you. They had that conversation with you, even if it only went for a couple of minutes. And that's what helped you kind of take a step that then led to some sort of outcome. And I don't know, like those people there feel like the friends that you can kind of go through life with. And maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, man,
You're right, baby. You're right. You are right. So true. The one thing that I'm really looking forward to you experiencing more, Jack, I'm not saying you don't experience it now, because the feelings you're describing of the main feeling that you feel is the thing that it gets you going the most, used to be my feeling. And the only thing that trumps it is making an impact on someone's life and being able to feel the impact you've made on their life. So I'm so excited for you to start posting more of your journey and being able to, I'm not saying you haven't already, but like experience it in its entirety. And I want to have another conversation in a year's time when you've done a lot more of that and you can, and I want to see if your answer changes, because for me, I relate to where you are. I just feel this one level up in terms of a feeling that when I'm comparing my feelings, the impact one trumps absolutely everything. And it changed my whole life when I started just focusing on that. So I was chatting to Will about last night. It's just like that thing changed everything for me. It made me rethink about what actually matters.
The defining
And so I'm
moment.
keen to chat to you about that a bit further once we get a little bit down the line and we live a bit more.
Done. Yeah, dude, it's it'd be interesting to watch it play out, because you're right. It's like I haven't gone through a lot of like everything that I've done, frankly. As I said before, the business was like very much focused on a specific outcome for a customer, and you never kind of meet that customer, you never meet that merchant. You were always kind of behind the scenes of whatever happened. The only experience I've ever had with that is when I was young, I started doing a lot of media, and there was this one defining moment where one of the first, it was Today's Show here in Australia. It's a morning show for those overseas, and we went down to Sydney. I was only 16, so mum had to come down with me because we had to stay in a hotel, and you know, you're under 18, you can't check in. So mum came and we did the interview, just myself and these two hosts. Went well. I got up. I walked back to the green room where mum was waiting. And there was this mum with her son. Son was maybe 8 years old. And he literally turned to his mum and he pointed to me and goes, I want to do what he does and I want to do that thing for the rest of my life. And I said, okay, like, really? And anyway, so the kid walked out and the mum turned around and said, the whole story they were doing was about him trying to find purpose. And then they were kind of having a conversation about that on the show. And she goes, I have never actually heard him talk about what he wants to do. And he had, I think it was Down syndrome, but it was something similar. And for me to be able to sit there and hear that whatever I had said, which at the time I just thought it was running a business, but for me to sit there and hear someone like him say something like that, where it felt like I'd actually had some sort of impact on someone, if I think about it now, was a pretty incredible feeling. And I'm talking about it now because it resonates with me. So yes, in a year's time, we'll have the conversation and we'll see if my answer changes.
But in the meantime, you're going to be documenting the whole journey.
Yeah. I want to do, I spoke about this China thing that I'm doing and Chris hasn't seen it yet. I mean, you've seen a few seconds of it.
Yeah.
I got a couple of smiles out of it, so I think you like it. But it's this like idea around a lot of people do, like everyone watches YouTube and most people that I know watch kind of vloggers. And people talk about what they're doing in a day. They kind of like, have the camera up in the air and you watch and you follow them around. The start of this whole conversation, we spoke about the camera in the room. And I want to recreate this whole idea around if I was 16 again, or 15, and I was sitting in a room and I wanted to start something. Ironically, that same feeling that I had that I've probably been running away from years and years. And I was that kid who didn't know what they wanted to do and that feeling of despair. What could I watch that I could sit there and go, you know what? That could be a path. And that seems pretty cool. And not just it seems pretty cool, but here is someone who was in my shoes, who is now doing it and who is now doing it a certain way. And they're documenting a journey that I could follow if I wanted to.
In its entirety as well.
Exactly.
Not just the gliss and the glamour.
Yes.
Exactly.
The good and the bad.
That's what's important about it.
So
because it makes the expectation real.
100%.
They're not trying to achieve a highlight reel.
100%.
Which is what most is doing.
And what I see with this podcast here and all the episodes that I've listened to is many people focus on a story. And they kind of talk about like, what do you do? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about kind of the highs and lows of your success. Let's talk about what you plan to do next. Let's talk about, very vanilla, broad topics, kind of the same story that's been told over and over again. And Chris, one of the most profound things that I've heard you say, especially in relation to this kind of podcast, is this whole kind of goal of sitting down and being able to take apart someone's story and do it differently in a way and find the parts that someone has missed. I don't know anyone, frankly, who can do that apart from you. And when you said that, and then I listen to these podcasts and I try and find, like, sit there and actively watch you do it. I sit there and actively watch you listen. Like, you've done it to me for the last, God knows how, like an hour or something.
2 hours.
Like, yeah, literally, I'll say something and then you don't just go off the last thing that I said and ask me some vanilla question back. You kind of pick apart the thing that I'd said 3 sentences before that really stuck in your head. But the question might have changed 3 times before you actually went and asked it. So this probably just turned into a, like, man, like I in a year's time, if we sit down and we speak again on this podcast, I cannot wait to see what this turns into, because you're up to what, episode 30? You're episode 30. People have done hundreds of these and you're 30. And like, man, I can't fathom, like, compared to what I listen to and compared to how I hear you communicate, knowing that you're the same age as me, I don't know what I can say apart from like, I cannot respect you more and I cannot take my hat off to you more. And I think everyone just wants to see where 12 months will lead. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah.
Mate. Wow. Jeez. Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Yeah.
Right. No, thank you so much.
True,
I really appreciate it. It means the world, and it just comes back down to that. If you're gonna do something, like just like do it and actually try, and don't settle for good. Like do it at a great standard. Make your head poke out of the. The thing is, what's crazy.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
And you know, just you know what I'll just say about that is people look at the success of the podcast and it's gone extremely well. Don't get me wrong, it's gone absurdly well. Do you remember when we were sitting down at Tart and I turned around, it was second in the country? It was great. I was blown away, right?
You were like, you were ready to scroll.
Yeah.
And you loaded the page.
And I was right at the top.
And you're right at the top.
In Burley.
Yeah. So we were at coffee, and he was asking me about the charts, and I was basically explaining like top 10 on the charts or whatever. Anyway, I click into it, and I'm fucking second under Mel Robbins, and I just went crazy. But where I'm getting at with this, just before we wrap up the show, is I'm not surprised. My goals were bigger than they were than I have achieved. I was that confident in what I was doing that I thought I was even going to go better than I did. And like you look at the results of my podcast, it's unheard of, right? But I had this absurd confidence in my ability and my output and my determination to make it a better show and obsess over every episode and make sure I'm improving them. And whenever I rent out a studio, I'm double checking all of their job. When that's their job, they should be able to do it the best they possibly can. And I'm still double checking to make sure they've got it right, because they don't have it right to my standard. They have it right to a good standard, which everyone else settles for. And all these little things just compound over time. And I think this is a message for everyone doing stuff in their life. They need to fucking do it properly. If you're not going to do it properly, don't even do it. Sit on your ass and do nothing, because you're going to get in the exact same spot. I think if you're going to do something, try your best to fast track that process and learn and grow and stick your head out of the crowd, because you're wasting time if you're not. And that would be my closing statement. Will, just before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say? We didn't obviously dive into we've got a dinner to go to as well.
What time?
It's 7:04.
It's also too, it's the most Chris dinner ever. It's steak.
Yeah, it's
Just
big
gonna eat
sirloin.
steak.
everyone was they were
Yes.
trying to book a restaurant, and I'm thinking, dude, I don't want to go out, but if we're gonna go out, let's get steak.
I would answer your question you asked Jack before about challenge and what makes you. Was it happiest? What was that question? It was what was the biggest challenge you have right now?
Yeah, it was what is the biggest challenge that you would say you have in your life right now?
And then what was the other one? The other one was
The feeling, what makes you feel the best?
the best. Yeah. So obviously we talked about this last night a little bit. I would say I'm in a very interesting spot, different to you, where I don't feel like there is one overarching challenge that I have right now. Maybe you could say it's relationships, because that's what I value the most, and I'm different to your company, where I personally know every one of our clients, and I know that we can make a direct impact on their life and their business. So, and I guess that speaks to values in a way. So I wouldn't say that there is a particular challenge, but I will say this. The thing that makes me feel the best happened 2 days ago. Jack and I had gone for a 11K run down to, I know I haven't told you this, went for an 11K run down at St Kilda Beach, right? And the sun was setting, and you know, we're playing some music on the side, and we're just running together and just chatting about things, right? And we just stop and look at this absolutely like mesmerizing sunset in the middle of a place that we'd never been before. We'd never run St Kilda. And having that shared experience with someone I really value friendship with, honestly, the best feeling in the world. And I would not change that for anything.
Oh, thanks, man. I want to give you a hug.
But we hate each other and our values don't align.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, and that just comes back down to that connection thing and what actually matters in life. And Yeah, we could talk for hours. We've got to wrap this. We've been going for over 2 hours now.
I'm hungry.
So we got to go get dinner. We have a booking in approximately 24 minutes, and the drive's 20 minutes away. So, thank you guys so much. I want to commend you. This was more of a round table. If you guys enjoyed this style of podcast, be sure to drop a comment down below or send me a DM on Instagram and let me know your thoughts. And I'll leave all of Will and Jack's details in the show notes and the description below. Definitely go check them out. They're both doing vlogs. They're both doing really cool stuff. So make sure you check them out. And yeah, let me know if you liked this format of conversation where it was a bit more round table, a bit more back and forth. But I'm going to wrap it up for this week. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review, and a good one, by the way, on Spotify or Apple. It helps the show grow. It helps us keep getting amazing people just like Jack and Will back on the show. But I'm going to close this out for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next week.